Good day, this 31st day of January. Meaningful moments, 365 days. So, movement is what I wanted to share today. It came to me as a meaningful moment in what seemed like an ordinary event of a day, of sort of one of those routines that we do. We were walking, my husband and I, and had been getting groceries and doing some errands. And here in the city, even though I've lived rurally and walked a lot when I lived rurally, here in the city we walk a ton, up and down stairs. And if you're familiar with Chicago, there's different levels. So, we can have a lower drive and a mid drive and an upper drive. So lots of different stairs to climb up and down. And I was carrying some different groceries and things like that, climbing some stairs. And I had this moment where this movement that I was doing, I could feel in my body, and I could feel my breath at the same time as I was like, ascending the steps, coming up. And all of a sudden, this movement that I felt come through me, I was very aware that in other moments I may have thought, oh man, this is kind of a hassle. I'm carrying these bags up with me. But in this particular moment, it wasn't like that. It was as if though the movement that was running through me connected me with the activity, with my breath, with the experience of going and purchasing these yummy items that I'm going to get to bring home. And all of it was one, and it was all spirit. And it made me think of a song that I used to sing to my children and with students, that it was about when the spirit moves us. You may remember it, something like, you gotta sing when the spirit says sing. You gotta sing when the spirit says sing. When the spirit says sing, you gotta sing right along. Sing when the spirit says sing. And you can change that up to when the spirit says to move, when the spirit says to sit, when the spirit says to rest, when the spirit says to dance, when the spirit says to talk, when the spirit says to run, whatever you want to add it to. We used to have tons of fun doing that. But it was this movement, this idea of movement and being connected with it in the way that spirit moves it. We can also call that energy. And the other two pieces that fell into place after I had that meaningful moment were, one, watching the storm. We had some snowfall here yesterday in Chicago, and watching that storm that came in yesterday. Out on the lake, you could see the waves. Big body of water, beautiful, has its own moods and temperaments and flavors of the day. And in this particular way, it was thrashing on the breaker walls. And I've witnessed that same view many times in different ways and watched the undulations upon the water and the movement. Sometimes it's very still. Other times it also has a swarm of birds or people walking about and activity, and it changes all that different scene. But it's a movement and it's a current of energy, and there's these interconnections with all these variables around it. But yesterday it was thrashing upon the breakers, and you could feel the power of that energy that was gathering as the storm was getting ready to come in. But there was no difference between the beauty of that or just the beauty of when it's still and glassy. Other times when it's shimmering and the sun makes it so incredibly blue that you could just sink into it and be there forever and a day. But this movement that we can perceive when we give our attention to it, that was one of those two pieces that came into place. And the other one was with my kitty cat. He had been sitting next to me and looking at me intently yesterday afternoon when I was working on some pieces for the website and the changes that are coming to the website, things that we're uploading and things like that, and making it more of a digital presence. But he had been waiting for a while and wanted me to give him attention. And so he was sitting there with intent eyes, just staring at me. And I could feel him, even though I wasn't even looking at him, I could feel him looking at me intently. You may have had those experiences. And I could feel that undercurrent of energy, a movement, just like this plant right now, moving, right? Even if it's still, there's still an energy around it. And finally I turned and I looked to my cat, and I thought to myself, okay, I know what you're wanting. And sure enough, down next to him, he had brought this yarn. It's the string of yarn. We laugh because we have invested in different cat toys, and he loves them and plays with them. But this string of yarn, which is just a plain piece of wool yarn from an old skein, he loves more than anything I've ever seen him really pay attention to or desire to want us to engage with him with. And he had brought it out just like a dog brings out a bone or a toy. Same thing, dropped it down, had it right there. And I picked it up and I realized that he wanted movement. He was asking to engage with him in this movement. So we have this dance that we do with energy. And I picked up that string and I ran. I ran around the apartment. And we have a wall that sort of divides a larger living space, and then a kitchen kind of galley style, and the wall in between where you can actually just run circles. And so I ran circles with him, 3 times. Sometimes I do 5 times or 10 times, but it was so clear to me, in his buoyancy of that running and that motion, that's what he was desiring to do, is to move. And all these pieces connected together are about energy. We talked about it a little bit on the respecting flow and being by the river a few days ago, but it's in us. It's an intrinsic part of us, the way energy is moving through us. And what a joy it is to be aware enough to understand the movement, not just in us, but how we interact with it and everything around us, the other life that is around us, that's also inviting us to engage, to participate, to contribute, to be part of this beautiful flow, this web of life, this matrix of energy, whatever you want to call it or how you can imagine it, but that it's moving. And it isn't still all the time. It is dynamic. And yet behind it, there is also this piece that is universal and one, that also can be silent and have movement within it. Or stillness, I should say, and have movement within it. So today, you may be finding different movements, different shades and tones and moods and ways that you will find yourself desiring to express that or engage with. And I encourage you to find the meaningful moments in what that energy is asking of you, sometimes even requiring of you, and to be willing enough to trust and move with the movement that calls you. And that when Spirit calls you to do something, you can do it. Oh, hey.